So throughout my entire life of processing firewood, this has always been how I stack firewood, directly on the ground. And there's some problems with this method, so in today's video I'm going to teach you how to make a DIY wood rack for about $20 a piece. I'm going to make two today. So first, let's talk about what the advantages are of stacking wood like this and what the disadvantages are. Well, the main advantage I can think of is this method is free. It doesn't cost any money, just stack it right on the ground, crisscross your corners, it doesn't cost a dime. I can think of at least 4 disadvantages. So disadvantage number 1 is you have wood directly on the ground. And that's disadvantageous because when it comes time to pick up the pieces off the ground that are sitting directly on the ground, no matter how long you have your pile tarp for, those pieces are always going to be wet. These pieces used to lay right next to this stack, and they were too wet to put into the fireplace, so I have them standing up trying to get them to dry out right now. Disadvantage number 2 of this method is that when you are picking up those pieces off the ground, because you have all this firewood weight just pushing down on these pieces, they oftentimes get stuck in the dirt. And oftentimes when you're pulling from your wood stack, it's winter and the ground's frozen. So it's a pain in the butt to try and pick these up off the ground. And you got to bend down much further. Disadvantage number 3 of this method is that you're not allowing any airflow to get underneath this stack. If we can engineer a way to get airflow going underneath the stack, the wood's going to dry out quicker. We're not going to have to bend down as further. And you're just going to be able to burn your firewood much quicker because it dries quicker and it seasons quicker. Disadvantage number 4 is actually the corners. So if you want to stack firewood like this, to do the corners properly, to make them stable, it takes a tremendous amount of time to make these corners. And if you don't take that time to do these corners properly, eventually over time you're going to find that your firewood stack's going to blow out. And it's happened to me quite a few times. So I've learned that if you are going to do it this way, you got to make sure your corners are solid. But there is a better way. And if you have about $20 to spend per rack, you can absolutely make your own DIY racks. And that's what we're going to do today. So first things first, let's talk about materials. So I bought 6 of these blocks because I plan to make 2 racks. Each rack I think is going to be able to hold about 3/4 of a quart of wood, but we'll have to see. But anyway, I bought 6 of these cement blocks, and each of those cement blocks cost $1.98 at Lowe's. Pretty cheap. And I also bought 8 of these 2x3x96 studs, and those cost $3.48. So for a grand total, the 2 racks that I want to make, it costs $42.35 for material. But I'm also going to use some scrap pallet wood just to make sure that nothing shifts or warps too much in the future. So let's get started on how we're going to build this. Alright, so I'm going to kind of go over a quick crude depiction of how this rack's going to work out. As you can see, I'm going to build a second rack simultaneously, but let's talk about the first rack here. So I have 3 cement blocks, 2 on the ends, 1 in the center, and the end blocks are stood up vertically. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take the 2x3s, going to insert it in the block like so, and that's going to create the end support beams there. Now these are 8 feet. I'm going to take these inside in a moment, cut these down to 4 feet, so we're going to have 4-foot sides on either end. Of course, we have the 2 other 2x3s going across these 3 blocks, and they're stood up on their edge. They're not laying down flat. You want to have them stood up on their edge because they're going to be much stronger that way. Now, a question you probably have is what's going to prevent these ends from kicking out? Well, in theory, how this design is supposed to work, you're going to have the pressure of this wood pushing down on these 2x3s. And the amount of pressure exerted by that wood through gravity pushing down on these 2 beams, in theory, should prevent this block from tipping over and kicking out that way. In theory, that's how it's supposed to work. But what I'm going to do to help strengthen this up a little bit is I'm going to drill a hole, and I'm going to put a screw or a bolt through the wood right here, just to make sure that that never comes undone and that never kicks out. Well, in theory, it could still kick out, but that's just going to prevent this piece from falling off the edge. But another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this pallet wood that I got for free, and I'm going to cut this down to size. I'm going to put a piece right here, a piece in the middle, a piece on the end, and then at the top of the 4-foot sides, I'm going to put another piece, just to keep everything even, and that should help to reduce warpage of the wood. So yeah, I'm going to cut everything now, we'll put it together, and we'll see how it works out. So before we go ahead and start putting wood on this rack, I just want to show you that everything feels actually quite solid. I think these straps really help. And another thing I like about this, when it comes to leveling the block, now I'm not breaking out a level to get this perfectly level, I'm just kind of doing it by eye. But the nice thing about this and the way that I have mine built is I could take this end right out, turn this to the side, you see that other block down there pivots, and from there I can get my shovel. Hopefully you can see this, and I can just roll this block forward, take my shovel, dig out a little bit of dirt, get that block sitting level or about where it needs to be. From there I can just lift this thing back up, insert this right into the holes in the block, then when I go to stand on it, everything kind of lines back up. And after we put the wood on there, these blocks are going to sink in the ground a little bit and definitely firm up a little bit. That's why it's just, you know, a little bit rocky right now, but overall really happy with how it's coming out so far. So now we're going to start putting some wood on this first rack and we'll see how well it does. Product looks like, and I can say I'm really happy with how it turned out. It looks really clean, looks really natural. You know, you could absolutely go out and buy one of these racks, but you know the good racks go for upwards of $100 a piece. It is nice that they do include the tarp, a lot of them, but you know, I'm too cheap to go out and spend $100 per rack when I can build my own for $20 a rack. And I got this tarp out of the garbage for free, and I've had that for probably like 5 or 6 years now, so this is going to work out just fine for me. I'd say there's a lot of things I like about this. I like that it's higher off the ground. Next year, like this is next year's wood stack, when I go to draw from this, as opposed to going all the way down on the ground, I only have to go to here. And these pieces aren't going to be stuck in the ground. They're not going to be soaking wet. They're off the ground. They're going to dry really well. And just really happy at how this thing's coming out. As for the ends, I mean, I'm putting a little bit of draw on that, but I mean, they're plenty strong for what it is. Side to side rack, you know, for what it is, I think it's plenty stable. Something I do plan to do in the future to add a little bit of stability is, as I build more racks and expand these racks further out, I am going to add stringers in between stacks, you know, just like a 2-foot dowel or unsplit piece of 2-foot whatever, you know, just something in between the stacks to tie it together to reduce that side to side wobble. Because I'm planning to stack this relatively high, like at least as tall as my head. And doing the calculations, I don't know if it could, one rack could truly hold 3/4 of a cord of wood. It's probably more like in between 1/2 and 3/4 of wood, because, you know, full cord is 8 foot long, 4 feet wide, 4 feet high. We're at 8 feet long. We're probably at about 3 foot high right here, so 4 feet probably be right here. But also take note that this, you know, the sides go outward. So you get a little bit more on the ends as you go higher. But a full cord is probably going to be about yay high. You know, I'm planning to stack it probably about that high, so it's going to be close to 3/4 of a cord per stack, but it's definitely going to be a little bit less than that. For $20, how can you beat it? Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and we'll catch you on the next one. You're released.